Consumer demand picture continues to gain strength in the United States. Marriott saying its July 4th weekend numbers were extremely strong, but that business travel still lagging behind leisure. Joining us now for his Squawk Box debut, Tony Capuano, Marriott CEO. And do we have anything left to talk about? We covered everything on break. So
it's good to be back in person.
Great having you.
Great.
No, it's great
Thanks
to have you here.
Me.
So let's talk about some of the things that we were just talking about off camera. That no one else got to hear, really. The overall environment on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of the bounce back, is some things are above pre-pandemic, but other things are still down 50%. It's kind of a hybrid. Right?
You almost have to look by segment and by region of the world. So start with China, our second biggest market. Occupancy's back to pre-pandemic levels. 3 straight quarters of leisure demand above 2019. And in March, business transient was 6% ahead of March of 19. So China's kind of back. U.S., little different mix. The recovery is really led by leisure. You talked a bit about 4th of July. We had a smashing 4th of July. And what was great, not just strong occupancy, but terrific pricing power. Our ADR over 4th of July weekend was 10% above 2019. Average daily rate. And if you look at the luxury tier, we were almost 35% ahead of 2019.
Simply because of pricing?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's the metric we use. We don't do year over year. We do year over 2019.
That's exactly right.
For your business. I miss Arnie. I love that man a lot, and I know everybody does. I would always ask him, I don't even know who Marriott is anymore. You got so many brands. He goes, yeah, well, tough. You better learn them because we're keeping them. Are you still?
Absolutely.
Why?
And I think 2 reasons. It's really around breadth of choice, but for 2 distinct groups. Our customers love that breadth of choice. And as you know, we've got round numbers, 7,600 hotels. We own less than 12. And our owners and franchisees, they like that breadth of choice as well. As they look to grow their portfolios with us, they like that depending on the market where they're developing, they've got 30 brands to choose from.
You know, we just heard from Ed Bastian at Delta that it's going to be a while before business travel really comes back. Is that a problem for you like it is for him?
Well, the fall's going to be really telling, to be sure. Again, China came right back. The U.S., what we're seeing is pretty steady increases. We're at about 50% in special corporate versus 2019. But what's interesting, if you just look at the secondary and tertiary markets, we're at about 80% of 2019. So it's markets like this, big urban cores, where folks haven't gotten back to the office yet. And so the reason I say the fall is telling, as schools open, kids get back to school. You've seen some of the big banks here in New York say you got to get back to the office. And we think a return to the office is going to be a big catalyst for business transit.
Just in terms of your portfolio revenue, how much is the big urban cities and how much of it is the secondary, tertiary?
Well,
markets?
Again, with 7,600 hotels, I almost have to go market by market. But certainly business and group are critical to our EBITDA.
Probably have your eye on Delta like everybody does. I'm talking about the variant. We just had Delta Airlines on talking about the Delta variant. It was weird. But do you have someone, you must have a staff that looks at vaccine policy around the world and how it applies to Marriott?
Well, we have 2 things. At the very outset of the pandemic, like many of our peers, we assembled a group of health experts to really guide our decision making. And then we have our government affairs and operations teams distributed around the world that are tracking policy. It is a complex and inconsistent set of rules.
I'm glad you're not the cruise industry. I mean, but so you don't need to be quite as wary, or how are you?
No, we absolutely.
How are you playing in countries where it's still a problem? How does that work? What do you need to stay in a hotel? Do you need to show the proof of vaccination?
Well, from the outset, at the start of the pandemic, all of our associates had to be masked. All of our guests had to be masked. In markets where the experts have given revised guidance, so today, for instance, in the U.S., if you go into our hotels, if you're a fully vaccinated associate, you can wear a mask. You're not required to wear a mask. The same is true for guests. We're not checking your credentials.
You haven't mandated vaccines for guests or for
We've not
employees.
mandated for our associates, but we've encouraged them, and we've provided some financial incentives, and it seems to be taking. I looked at some numbers last week. The level of vaccinations of our associates is actually ahead of the U.S. pace in aggregate.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.